This is my fifth and final video on the unit matter. We will be starting a new unit, unit number 2, measurements, in the next video lesson. In this video, we'll be talking about how to separate mixtures into its components. Motivation. Describe how you might separate a mixture of sand, salt, and water. We'll be discussing how to do this in this video. I'm sure most of you probably have an idea how to do it. So read the text. Mixtures can be separated based on their physical properties, boiling point, magnetic character, solubility, etc. A chemical reaction is not needed. Compounds, on the other hand, can only be separated into elements using their chemical properties. They must be reacted with other substances. Learning target. At the end of the lesson, I'll be able to describe different techniques in separating a mixture into substances. Announcements. Homework number 5, which will be a Junopod. There will also be another quiz, which will also be a Junopod. This is based off the previous lesson and this lesson. The first exam will be on Unit 1, Matter, and Unit 2, which is Measurements. So here's a matching activity. Before we do this activity, I want you to watch a TED video. The link is in the description under this video. Once you watch the video, come back to this video. For this matching activity, I want you to read the description of each of these techniques. Then, on the bottom of this table is a word and picture bank of the properties used and picture of technique. Use the picture and the property to match it with the description of the technique. Once you've done it, then resume this video. Okay, so let's go over the answers. For filtration, the property used is solubility. For evaporation, it is the boiling point of water. Distillation is the different boiling points of the liquids. For chromatography, it is polarity, charge distribution of a molecule. We will cover in the future what is polarity, but for now, just know that the property used in chromatography is polarity. And the last one is magnetism. Now, here are the pictures. I'll go over each one. So let's start with filtration. Filtration is a very common technique used in chemistry to separate a heterogeneous mixture of an insoluble solid in a liquid. So in this example, we have chalk, which is insoluble in water. We're going to pour this mixture through a filter paper. The filter paper will prevent the insoluble solid from passing through. So only the water will pass through the filter and the solid will remain on the filter paper. Here's a GIF or GIF of what's happening. So you're going to fold the filter paper and place it in the funnel. We're going to separate a sand water mixture. So the water is going to flow through the filter paper, but the sand is going to stay stuck on it. Okay? So this GIF, I guess, I'll keep playing over and over again. So once you're ready, move on to the next slide. Distillation. So distillation is another common technique. It's used to separate a homogeneous mixture, right, of two different liquids. Right? So typically your solution will look like one substance, right, but it's actually mixed. In this case, is alcohol and water. So have you ever seen a mixture of alcohol and water? It looks like one thing. It's a homogeneous mixture. So we're going to separate it by the difference in boiling points of those substances. Alcohol has a lower boiling point than water, so when you boil the solution, alcohol is going to evaporate first. It's going to condense back into a liquid here, which you collect. So here's a GIF or GIF what's happening. So you're going to boil a solution here. The liquid that has the lower boiling point is going to evaporate first and condense into your collection flask. So here's one with particles. So you can see that the one with the higher boiling point stays in this flask, while the one with the low boiling point evaporates and gets collected here. Fractional distillation is basically a type of distillation. It's usually much better than just a simple distillation because they add things like beads to help improve the separation. So here's an example of crude oil separating into its many components. Here's a GIF of guess what's happening, right? And here's another example of fractional distillation of air. So here air is separated into gaseous nitrogen and liquid oxygen. So paper chromatography. So I think most of you or some of you have done this experiment back in middle school in which you put ink from a marker onto a piece of paper, then you put that piece of paper onto water. Through capillary action, water would travel up the paper, which would then carry on some of the components of the ink. This is what's happening. So the property used here is the polarity of the different components of that mixture. In this case, it's ink. All right. So you can imagine an analogy of this would be like rocks in the river. The smaller rocks flow further down the river than the big rocks. But in the future, I'll discuss what polarity is, and we'll come back to this. So the next one is evaporation. So typically, you're evaporating water, right? You have a soluble solid that's dissolved in water, right? And you want to get rid of the water by evaporating it. So this is your evaporating dish, right? That holds your homogeneous mixture. So below it is your Bunsen burner, which provides the heat, and you're basically boiling off the water. After you boil off the water, basically you're left with your solid, okay, that was originally dissolved in water. Let's do a couple learning checks. Which physical property makes it possible to separate components of crude oil by means of distillation? So pause the video and resume once you have the answer. The answer is 4, boiling point. Number 2, when a mixture of water, sand, and salt is filtered, what passes through the filter paper? So try to do this and resume the video once you got the answer. Okay, so the answer is 3. The sand will stay stuck on the filter paper. Water, which dissolves the salt, will pass through the filter paper. A student observes the following reaction. After the products were filtered, which substance remained on the filter paper? So try to do this yourself, pause the video, and resume once you're done. Okay, so here's the answer. So when it talks about products, it's referring to these things over here. So which substance remained on the filter paper? We know the solid is going to remain on the filter paper, so it's this substance here. NaCl is dissolved in water. It will pass through the filter paper. So this concludes the video lesson for today. Remember to do the Juniper homework and quiz.